Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fanzone Debate. We are here for a title match. Yesterday, I was part of a melee match where Dylan was the host. He opened it up and he said, "We've got an exciting one for you today. That's the only word I know how to use to describe matches anymore." And I feel the same way every time. We got an exciting match. Right? I do the same thing, Dylan. So I just had to catch myself from doing it, but I genuinely mean it. I think we do have a pretty exciting one for you. We got Brian Michaels, the champion, going up against Robert Castner. This is exciting for a few reasons. One, Brian just won the belt off of Cody at the end of Mayhem at the Multiplex. That was after a very exciting run from Brian in the tournament to get himself to that point. He played fantastic, beat people like Kirk, beat Nazario, beat Holtzman, all people who have challenged for belts or held belts. So that was super exciting for him to be able to finish it off with the victory and get the belt. But on the other side of things, Robert played sneaky good in this last picture. And I don't even know if sneaky good, because just good. He played great. He played Tyler Birch and then went up against Jack and got a 3-0 knockout against Jack, who had been playing sneaky good. Sneaky good is a good way to describe Jack in that last picture. So Robert's playing at the top of his game. Brian's playing at the top of his game, but Brian's had a bit of a break, and Robert has been focusing on other things as well. Will that affect him? He just won a belt over in Fandom Fights. Maybe winning that belt was the confidence boost he needed going into this one. Who knows? But I'm excited. So I got Cody and Mark here with me for this one. Cody, other than the obvious reason of you sitting there seething, are you excited for the match, and what do you think?
I mean, I felt like I just got called up here to just tell about my past failures that haven't kept me up since I lost the belt. Yes, I know. Brian beat me. I'm so happy for him. This is not exciting. This is just fucking torture. But I'm here to help you because this is the first one in a long time I'm just not involved in on the other end. Brian knows how I feel about him as a debate person. As soon as he came back, I told him to retire again. I think he's that good. His run is the most impressive run that I think has ever been done in this thing. Even if he loses this title right now, he'd be my vote for Fanzone Player of the Year without the belt because of the run he did. He beat every person that shouted for the belt to get, and then me, Kirk, and that's a who's who. Robert has played. This is not going to sound rude at all to anybody else, but Robert has played some players leading up to it that are not equal to what Brian had to play getting into his title match. But I don't think that weakens Robert's chances. He's just going to have to be ready because he's now moved up a weight class to what he fought. And I think he's ready for it. He's played hard players before, so he's able to take punches. But I think it's interesting. Depends on what they pick, how they sway us. But yeah, I think this is anybody's ball game, but I mean, Brian is on a run that's scary. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mark, welcome as well. How are you doing? And what do you think of this matchup, man?
I think we have a terrific match here today. See, that's the only time that word's ever going to be used. I mean, I've never going to remember it again.
I've never heard you open up a melee match like that, but
never.
It's never happened.
It really opens up with any positivity.
Hey, it's melee. Thanks for being here.
Got a match?
I'm sorry, Mark. What do you think?
You succinctly put it together. Yeah, feel so naked here now. Yeah. This is going to be a good one. Obviously, you got two people who been known for wearing glasses and hats. They also color coordinated slightly here. One's kind of wearing a lot of white. One's wearing a lot of black. So really clashing here today. Brian, I've said this a lot. Brian we talked about the run he made to win the title. Very impressive. And Robert here I think has taken a step up in his game over this past year. There are a couple players I think that have taken a step up, I think him and Joe, kind of shown that they're ready for that kind of top tier level of talent in this league,
Yeah.
and him being here right now, I think is just a confirmation of the said fact.
All right. Well, it was recently pointed out to me that we talk a lot on this program, and we've already been talking for 5.5 minutes. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna bring in the players, and I'm gonna ask you each a quick question, and then we're gonna get the ball rolling. But Robert, we're gonna start with you. Did you wear black on purpose?
Yeah, I definitely knew because I have cameras in Brian's house that he was going to wear white. So I was like, I need to be an opposite.
And you feeling good? You feeling bad?
I feel pretty good. The only thing that's splitting my time between Fandom and Fanzone did is make me tired. But my focus is not split. I'm just tired. But when debate happens, juices flow. So
that's fair. Brian, did you wear white on purpose?
No, but I'm really hoping that he wasn't watching the cameras earlier today because he's going to be scarred. Well, that might help me if he's like got some psychological issues.
I knew you were going to say something like that. Also, Brian, you have kids. Robert has kid, but he has kid much younger than your kids. Do you think you have the advantage in this arena?
On that particular? Oh, absolutely.
Yes,
my kid, I can just
fucking
fucking leave him out in the snow and it wouldn't fucking matter. His kid actually needs attention. You know, mine I want to push away. No, but I don't think I have any advantages here. I think this is going to be a fun match. I have one goal here, and that's to not be one and done. I just want to get in one defense before I lose. I have no illusions about like beating Cody's record because, you know, knowing the potential matchups in the next couple matchups after this, if I make it past Robert, the likelihood of me getting that many defenses is nothing. But I just want one. Just want one. And you have a title. You got a Fandom title. Let me have this.
That's fair.
And as for Cody, I'm just hoping that his desire to see me lose is offset by his desire to want to face me again and get his win back. So
that's also fair. I once said the same thing of like, let me have this one when I played Nick Tuig in debate. I was like, just let me have this. My God. So this is how it's going to work. This is a title match. So there are 5 prep questions that the players have based on categories that they drafted. They are each going to have 1 minute to open their arguments, followed by a 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing at the end of the debate. Cody, Mark, and I will write on our handy dandy boards who we thought won the question. 2 out of 3 wins you a point, and the first person to 4 points wins the match because this is a title match. So if we need to go to the bonus round, there will be 2 bonus questions if needed. Gentlemen, any questions?
Nope.
No, let's stay alive.
Please. All right, we are going to kick this one off with the first category, which was drafted by Brian. It is in the category of epic adventures. And your question is, what is the best action scene in an Indiana Jones film? So, Brian, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute when you start talking. I will come in to give you a 10-second warning when the time comes.
So I love the entire Indiana Jones trilogy. Of all 3 of the movies that exist, after which they never made any more, many people call Last Crusade their favorite. I generally give the slight edge to Raiders as an overall movie, but I absolutely see the case for Crusade. And when looking at individual scenes, Crusade features one of the best, that being the tank chase. You all know the scene. Henry and Marcus are trapped in the belly of the Steel Beast, flanked by a whole convoy of Nazis. Indy's just on horseback as he faces off against the crushing treads and the massive firepower of the tank's top and side turrets, as well as just Nazi guns. He has to use both his skills and his brains to take out the tank's guns, even causing it to take out its own escorting trucks. He finds himself caught hanging by his bag strap, almost crushed against the embankment. He has to save his dad from being pulled off and crushed under the treads with his whip before Salah arrives to take him away. The scene culminates in Indy seemingly going over the cliff with the tank as his dad and friends mourn him, only to reveal in true Indy adventure style, he's escaped at the last minute. The whole scene is expertly staged with some of the best action and set to another rousing, masterful John Williams score.
Time. All right. We're going to move over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Indiana Jones movies, they contain action scenes of varying quality. buoyed by large set pieces, triumphant scores. You can't help but drum up feelings of nostalgia and wonder. And I think the apex of what defines the quintessential Indiana Jones action scene that ties everything that you want to see and feel from Indy and the world around him is when Indy chases down the truck that's holding the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think there's not a better blend of stylistic type of action that culminates what's happening there in this scene. You have old-timey Westerns. He's a cowboy on a white horse chasing down a mechanical beast. Has that Westerny feel, has an action epic feel when you're looking at the far out shots of the desert. You have a wartime feel with the Nazis and the guns. And it's best because it's buoyed by everything practical and everything that holds up. And you get the best version of Harrison Ford, the most youthful version that plays into that.
Time. All right, 2 excellent scenes, gentlemen. You have 5 minutes when one of you starts talking. I will throw up the 1-minute warning when the time comes. I will still come in to give you the 10-second warning at that time. If I feel like you won't shut up and you're not letting your opponent speak, I'll throw up the let your opponent talk. Don't make me do that, or I will send Nick Tuig to your house. People like him now, I guess. I don't. He's mean. He'll hurt you. Don't make me do it. 5-minute free form when one of you starts talking.
So the truck chase is fun, but the tank chase, I think, takes everything that great scene did and improved upon it, cranking things up and raising the stakes. The horse versus tank is way more exciting than a horse versus a truck. Getting crushed under treads is far more intimidating and deadly than truck tires. And the more personal stakes, I think, makes a big deal because the action's more meaningful. Indy isn't just after the latest MacGuffin. Here he's fighting for the lives of his father and friend. If he fails in yours, the truck gets away. That's it. Marion's already been saved. He's just after the Ark. If he fails in mine, the lives of his father and friend are at stake.
And if he fails, Hitler gets his hands on the Ark and Nazis roam over the planet. I would say that both of these are kind of mirror scenes of each other. But I would say that where you see excitement, I see a plodding, slow, cumbersome mechanical object that Indy can very easily defeat with some turns and a rock, and a well-placed rock. And I feel like in comparison to the truck, there's more kinetic energy with that. I feel like there's parts where when we're going between what's happening outside and inside, we're drawing away from what's happening with Indy, and it becomes sort of schlocky and shticky with how it is that we're reliant on Marcus and Henry Jones Sr. trying to take out the tank. It becomes kind of screwball comedy, whereas in my scene, I think, given that you have Harrison Ford at his most impactful action-wise, and given how the close quarter fighting and the practical effects bring together what's going on, I think it just elevates what's happening with the tank scene, which seems really slow.
I don't think the stuff with Henry and Marcus inside the tank takes away from it. I think that it isn't an action part of the scene, but it is part of this action scene. And I think on top of everything going on outside, you have the best addition to the franchise. Sean Connery as Henry gets to be in there, and Brody inside the tank, offering both moments of levity and reminding people of the stakes. Your action scene isn't even really that much actual action. If you look at it, it's a relatively slow speed car chase there too, where much of the action is padded with just knocking over ladders and waterways. When Indy's driving, he brushes all but one of the soldiers off with just the trees around him, and he gets the cars and motorcycles off the road just by doing little slight movements of the steering wheel to bump them off the road. Not to mention, you can visibly see a window covered with just a canvas flap between the cab and the back of the truck. Any one of the soldiers could have easily just shot him right through that hole.
I mean, but they're soldiers, and they're not there to be thinkers. They're there to be action people, and they're not smart enough to realize that maybe they shouldn't go around the truck. But what I think about yours, when I think about what I want in an Indy scene, I want him to win, but I also want to see him get the shit kicked out of him as well. And he gets more of the shit kicked out of him in my scene with how it is that he fights the driver. He gets shot. He almost gets crushed underneath the truck. He has to drag along, and he has to pull himself back up. With yours, yes, he slowly goes towards a stony embankment, but for the most part, he remains pretty clean. A lot of that because he's on the horse for a lot of it. But I mean, when he's fighting all the soldiers, he's able to take out like 3 with 1 gunshot. And usually in what you would want to see in Indy going back and forth in an action scene, it doesn't hold up as much. And like I said, I think in my scene, Indy is the focal point and everything is relying on him accomplishing what's going on. Without Henry, without Marcus, without Sala coming in and saving Henry at the end of the day, everything would be flattened for our heroes. And I think that takes away from, I want Indy to be centric indie action. And that's not what I feel like in the tank scene for a lot of the time.
I think Indy is centric for a lot of it, and he does get the shit kicked out of him. He gets beat up on the outside. He almost gets crushed against that embankment. He gets his face pushed against the treads and gets all shredded up there. And you say you want to see Indy win. In mine, you get the satisfying defeat of one of the primary villains of the film in Colonel Vogel. Whereas in the truck chase, the only casualties are a handful of nameless Nazi soldiers, and Belloc and Dietrich, the only thing they get is bumped off the side of the road at the end of the scene. I mean, so you don't even get the satisfaction of that. And filmmaking wise, you talked about how yours holds up better. I think especially when he does that part where he goes underneath and drags behind it, there are several scenes in there that kind of shows the age of the filmmaking. There's some clearly sped up shots and moments, including when he goes under there, which is something that, you kind of overlook, but it's just something that when you look back on it now, it always stood out and looked a little silly.
And we're supposed to look over, you mentioned the triumphant, we reach triumph over one of the quintessential Nazi villains, but when we see it, I mean, that scene, when we get the close up, is such terrible CGI and it looks so silly that any sort of upstanding energy that I had is sort of flattened out because it looks really of its time. And I think what's going on with how it is Indy's holding onto the truck and how everything is shot spatially and how he's almost run over or run into. And then we do get to see a Nazi run over with the truck. So it's not like it's just a general brushing off of the soldiers.
Okay. All right. We're going to start with Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
I think in the truck scene for Raiders of the Lost Ark, you don't get more of a hero-y action set piece than what's going on there with the Western, the adventure, the wartime placement, the set pieces, the practical effect, how the score places. Brian mentioned MacGuffin. It's our first MacGuffin, so it's not like we've seen this before. And Indy wins, but it's in the middle of the film, so we don't know what that means in terms of how we're going to get into a third act, which is interesting in and of itself. I think to conclude, the truck chase is all the setup style, pacing, back and forth fun action that you come to expect from these movies, and it's never really surpassed what we have going on with the tank. It's a mirror copy of it, but it's done in a more slow, plodding, not as exciting way. There's a lot of comedy that's laced into it that doesn't need to be there. It's not what I want in my indie action scene. There's even like a ricochet bullets. It's like a Rube Goldberg machine. It's sort of out of place and out of context. I think my scene holds up much better than his.
Time. Okay. Let's go over to Brian for his 1 minute closing when you start talking.
First doesn't mean better. The truck chase in the first Indiana Jones film was fun and offered some thrilling moments for sure, even if some of it doesn't fully hold up under close inspection as an individual scene. But aside from the one main stunt of him going underneath, it's largely just bumping cars and brushing people off with trees. The Last Crusade's tank chase takes everything that scene did do well and improved upon it. The action is bigger and more intense, with a slower, yes, but far more intimidating and dangerous vehicle with more firepower, meaning more danger, more bombastic action, and the stakes are higher and more personal, fighting for the loved ones' lives instead of just pursuing the movie's MacGuffin, making every moment of that action more meaningful. It involves a major villain in the fight in Colonel Vogel when you get to dispatch him, like I mentioned earlier. And it's shot better, it's edited better, without the jarring sped up moments that Raiders has. Even Williams' score in Last Crusade takes the themes from Raiders and builds on them and enhances them, making them more exciting. Everything in this scene just comes together to make for a perfect action scene in a perfect film.
Okay. All right. I'm going to bring in the judges. Now I want to fucking rewatch Raiders and Last Crusade. I fucking love both those movies, man.
Just watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I like half that movie.
Yeah.
Literally everything until they start swinging with monkeys. I don't hate. Then the monkey shit happens. The opening is actually quite fun, and then he goes in the fridge, I guess. Anyway,
two good action set pieces in that movie. And
fucking aliens, man.
I definitely appreciated it better after seeing Dial of Destiny.
I don't hate Dial of Destiny.
At least like, Crystal Skull felt like an Indiana Jones movie.
The time travel shit lost me big time.
Oh, that too, yeah.
I still haven't seen it.
It's so well. There's time travel, and
Yeah,
Good
it's
thing I didn't pick a theme.
It's spoiler, yeah.
No, I'm not. I wasn't. I didn't say that as a spoil. Like, hey, you spoiled it. I don't care like, at all.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Thought this was good. Good start. If mild, with no Cody, no Kirk here, and you're not getting people getting fucking super heated and crazy. You just get some
Keep throwing shots.
I'm not throwing shots. I'm just saying it's
light shots.
You guys have very similar styles in your debate.
too, unfortunately, for people who are wanting to be entertained.
Oh, I thought it was entertaining. Anyway, I went with Brian. I thought that both did a good job, but I thought that Brian got the edge for me purely on they both did a good job of explaining why the action was good. And Brian like raised the stakes more. There's a villain that's killed. He's fighting to save people. And I thought that Robert's take back against the MacGuffin thing of being like, like it's the first one, so like we've never seen something like this before, like was good. But I thought Brian just did a better job of being like, there's more in this scene that Indy is fighting for, and that makes the scene more exciting and a better action scene. So I gave the edge to Brian on that one. Mark, where are you going?
I also did go with Brian. This was a good first one. I feel like once we started, Brian, I think, definitely had me. I think he pointed out, all the things he needed to from his scene. And then Robert went, I think, also had a really good start. And he threw out a couple of things of him, like, okay, these are pretty good blows to throw at Brian. Excuse me. And then Brian he had an answer for pretty much almost every one of them. Like, I think Robert also did a good job. I think Tim brought up a couple of things of kind of slipping out of like some big blows on him. But I think also, kind of as Tim said, Brian just kind of kept unloading things about his scene that I think at that point just kind of made it very difficult for Robert to win this point.
Cody, your vote doesn't count. Where'd you have gone and why?
Yeah, Brian is very surgical how he dissects how he opens, how he closes, and then what he does in the middle. And I think Robert kind of fell into the trap. You could also see that both of these players enjoy this franchise by how they were debating it, because it's like hard to nitpick. But Brian got into a nitpick battle, and Robert jumped right in with him and started arguing with CGI and stuff like that. I think he was painting the picture really well on it, but I think that we got lost in the weeds in the middle of the five. So that's why I ended up going with Brian. But it was closer than 3.
All right. So Brian wins the first point, but we still got many more to go. Let's move on to the second question in the category of sports. This was drafted by Robert. Your question is, which sports comedy character would be the most fun to play their respective sport with? Robert, you're kicking this off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think fun is a relative thing. And if my intent is to play a sport, to put myself out there to compete and live within the constraints of what that sport entails, I want someone who can put me in the best spots to succeed, because I am a competitor, while also being competent themselves and not losing what makes them great, while can also cut it up a bit, make me laugh, but I don't need to be laughing the whole time, because this isn't stand-up. I'm not here to watch comedy. I'm here to take part in a competition. And I think Billy Hoyle, played by Woody Harrelson from White Man Can't Jump, is the best combination of being fantastic at what he can do on the court, be confident in making sure that he knows what I can do best and put me in the best spots to succeed, and understand that he can live life and death and bring up the intensity of what we're trying to do, because he's gambled his life savings and his life can depend on it. And that's important, because he can stray between being very aggressive and very fun.
Time. Okay. Let's go over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
So if I'm looking for someone to play a sport with, but the emphasis here is on fun, I want someone who not only has the ability to play the game, but will be fun just to be around and who can be entertaining as well. Space Jam's Bugs Bunny fits that description perfectly. Besides just being able to play a skillful game of basketball, he's a great strategist and can draw up plans to defeat opponents. He's intelligent and can outsmart and outwit other players, and he shows great physical ability at the game. But he isn't just about winning. Bugs is someone who's loyal, kind, and helpful to his friends. He'll inspire your confidence in you and would give great motivational speeches. And most importantly, playing with Bugs would be fun. He has decades-long history of humor and entertainment, and yes, it's a history referred to in the context of this film. When playing with Bugs, the laws of physics and reality don't even apply. In a toon game, the only limits are imagination. I can jump superhuman heights. I can stretch my arms out, and who knows what else I'll be capable of. There's no danger of being actually hurt when playing a toon game. From the game itself to the pleasant company I'm in with Bugs to his entertaining personality and humor, in every aspect, playing with Bugs would be just a great fun time.
I totally forgot what you guys picked, so this is going to be interesting. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Brian, you mentioned knowledge base and skills that Bugs has. When I remember watching Space Jam, I remember him making one steal and one pass. And that was done in the context of he can do Looney Tunes things. And by the way, if this is the argument, a big part of the argument is that we're using him so that we can defy the laws of physics. Give me anybody else who I feel like can play the game up to a skill level that can help me compete. And if I'm not as well versed in that sport, can tell me what to do. Give me Lola Bunny. I can be there. Plus, I know she can hoop and she'll wreck shop. Bugs, I don't know what he can do on the court. Not necessarily. I know he can ruin the court because I've seen him pop up and destroy what's going on the ground floor of the court. I know he can make jokes. I know he can bring dangerous animals and explosives on the court, which is scary. But I don't know what he can do to put me in the best spot to succeed and to have fun. And I want to do both simultaneously.
I don't know the count of the amount of baskets and things that he did in this movie, but I do know that if he made one, I believe he shot one, that's 100% of his shots he made. So there you go with that. He has ability. He can make baskets against giant monsters, things like that. But I'm not even necessarily in this game to win. It's the question is who would be the most fun to play the game with, and he's going to have fun. And Lola Bunny might be good, but she's not as entertaining as Bugs. Bugs is iconic. The problem with Billy Hoyle's a hustler. He's good at basketball, but he's someone you can't trust. You're always going to be wondering if you're actually just another mark to him. His trash talking would get old real fast. If he's your opponent, you're not going to be having fun being constantly insulted. And if he's on your team trash talking others, he's probably just pissing them off and causing trouble and conflict.
In the context of the movie, he's actually the honorable hustler. It's Sidney Dean who's the one who screws him over, and they have to go and try to get the money back. So I actually trust that Billy understands sort of the nuances of a partnership, and I don't feel like he would screw me over because of that. And I mean,
he's had a history of screwing people over. He hustles people on the court.
He hustles people on the court, but if we're playing together, I know that we've entered an agreement and a partnership. Plus,
if you're on the same team.
If we're on the same team, I'm doing under the context that we're playing together. So yeah, I think we're on the same team. And if we're in a situation where I am down on my luck, I would like to understand the subtle nuances of being a hustler, and maybe he can improve my game so that maybe I can win a little bit of money on the side. That would be wonderful if my life depended on it, I'm saying. But with regards to Bugs, yeah, he's fun, but he makes jokes a mile a minute. You talked about Billy Hoyle's trash talking getting old. I feel like his jokes would get old, and we'd just be like, can we get on with the game, please? Because I feel like he would be doing impressions and wearing dresses, and I don't know where we're going to go from there.
My other problem with Billy, I will say, Billy is a man who's on the run from mobsters due to gambling debts. You don't want to be around him or be associated with him when they find him. Being around him, much less playing with him, is likely going to end up getting you beat up or shot. That's not fun. With Bugs, there's no real danger with playing with tunes. I mean, the worst case scenario could happen when you would play in a tune game is you get hit in the head, you see stars and birds. Explosion leaves you with a soot face, or if you get squished, they'll just reinflate you. But I would rather play in a game. I'm not going to have fun playing a game where I'm in danger because of problems he has in gambling debts.
Well, I mean, by the end, he paid off his debts and everything was fine. It seemed like it would be bad, but he figured out how to get past it. I think people like Billy
again.
Well, and then they won, and then people had to go their separate ways because that's the nature of the story, and people couldn't be together because loves contradict each other. But besides that, we're not talking about what white man can jump to do. But Billy is a cool customer on the court. Sidney even mentions it. It's only when he understands the nuances of what he's trying to get out of the people he's playing with and against, that he ever goes really hard at people. So I feel like he would understand what kind of best motivates me, which is not being yelled at, but giving me nice passes in nice areas, letting me shoot my shots. That's wonderful. With Bugs, he might give me that once, but then he might go off on a tangent because he's got a bit of tune ADD. And what you mentioned, you can recover from it, but it still seems scary at the time to be hit in the head or to be completely flattened on a court. So
the one last point I want to make about Billy is you'll likely, if dealing with Billy, playing with him, you're likely going to have to deal with his nagging girlfriend as well. And that voice is nails on chalkboard. I would rather be flattened by something or be pounded on the head with something and not have to deal with Rosie Perez's voice. I just wanted to make that point before this ended. Go ahead.
Well, it might be grating, but she has a wealth of knowledge that she used to win Jeopardy. So maybe I'll learn.
It's not fun.
Oh, this is weird. Let's go to Brian. Brian, you're closing first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Oh, yeah, that's weird. Okay. Okay. So the question is simple. Who would be the most fun to play basketball with? The guy who potentially is hustling you and looking to take your money? The guy who's going to spend the entire game insulting you and trash talking? The guy who's maybe out to hustle other people using you and might get you shot at? The guy with debts and very dangerous people looking for him that could end up getting you hurt or killed? Or is it the one who's all about fun? The one whose very specialty is comedy and entertainment? The one who is loyal and supportive to his friends? The one who also happens to be good at the game with the wits and physical abilities to help you win and have a great time doing it? The one you can enjoy playing with without any worry of real danger or injury? And the one with whom you can ignore the laws of physics and be capable of amazing things that you couldn't otherwise do? Playing with Bugs Bunny is fun. Playing with Billy Hoyle is annoying, and it's possibly dangerous to both your wallet and your life. So Bugs Bunny or Billy Hoyle? This isn't a hard choice to make. One of them's fun. One of them's going to get you hurt.
Ooh, ending 5 seconds early on both. Again, it's timing weird. Robert, 1 minute when you start talking.
Billy was only ever set up in dangerous situations when he came around Sydney and his crew. He hustled people in Brooklyn and lots of good people for many a year before he ever got into trouble or before there were situations where things would be dangerous. I'm a competitor. I do stuff because I want to win. And in the context of the movie, Sydney sees a meal ticket with Billy because Billy hustles him the first chance he gets to meet him on the playground circuit. So winning's always in the cards with Billy. But we know from the context later in the movie that in a partnership, he will not screw you. If you ever listen to basketball experts, the people you want to be teammates with are those who galvanize the team and allow you to succeed in best spots. And that's what Billy can do. Bugs, I don't know if he can play the game because I only ever saw him do two positive things that weren't defined by the laws of physics of Looney Tunes. And if we want that, we can get anybody else who can play the game a bit better. I don't need to be bombarded by jokes. I don't think that's fun in the context of what I'm trying to do while I'm playing a game. It can get annoying. It can get cumbersome. And the game will never be finished under Bugs. Boo.
Time. Okay. Oh, we lost Cody.
Oh, snap.
All right, we've all heard all the arguments. I still have to write my answer down. It's been like 7 seconds, but for a clean cut, I did it this way. It'll be great. I'll say, "Oh no, Cody's gone." Oh hey, we're back. Anyway. I'm sad no one picked Nacho Libre.
I mean, I thought about people like
it's not even a good movie.
No, it's not. I've seen that movie one time. It's terrible. Are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Cody, you're kicking us off.
So that was an interesting fight, and I was like, how is Robert going to combat with Bugs Bunny with fun? And he kind of swayed fun into his own way and made it like, I want to play, I want to win, I want to have a good time with who I'm playing with and all that stuff. I think Brian picked like the more obvious, like fun would be interesting, defying laws of physics. Robert just painted a picture, which would make Bugs one of the worst people to play with that's ever existed. Like he may have picked the worst Looney Tune after Robert did Dismantling for me. I think Brian did the best he could. And I think when he picked it was a clear cut. but the amount of holes that it was able to punch into it just was too much for me. I ended up going with Robert.
Okay. I'll go next. It didn't happen on the first question, but it's happening on the second. I went with Brian. I changed your last name to Fantana.
It means no one gets the point.
No, Brian. Brian gets the vote. So I don't know. I thought that, like I said, this was weird. And I thought that Brian did a good job of explaining to me why he would be fun. And to me, I agree with Cody that Robert did a good job of poking holes in bugs. But I thought that Brian did a better job poking holes in Woody Harrelson's character. That was for me like I've never seen White Men Can't Jump, which I've been told I need to.
Only watch the original, don't watch the remake. Just saying.
Yeah,
I've heard the remake is terrible as well. But based on what Brian said to me, and I also don't remember shit about what Bugs Bunny did in Space Jam. Like, I don't fucking know. But I thought that Brian did a good job of painting the picture of like, guy's dangerous, the people around him are obnoxious. Like, even if Bugs isn't gonna be like the player who's hitting like all these threes and stuff, like, I'm still having fun. So I gave it to Brian. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, for this, we kind of mentioned like a bit of weird. I don't know what it is about these sports questions. Like every time like we get into these sports questions, like, oh, this will be a fun question, and then we get into the fight. It's like, okay, what is this? Like what like, I mean, it's like, this isn't as bad as the best athlete in a baseball movie, but you know what? I feel like we're treading the same waters.
He could have picked Space Jam from the Legacy, Bug Bunny. Why not?
He did. Could have.
Could have been a lot of things. Anyway, at this particular fight, yeah, I did go with Robert. I did tend to agree with. I kind of agree, kind of how Cody saw this. I'm like, sometimes to win a point in this game, you just kind of have to construct your own argument and see if the judges buy it. And honestly, the two of us did. And like, because I feel like Robert pointed at, I think, a key thing here, that if we're playing something together, I want to win the game. And I feel like of the two people here, like, he constructed the argument of one of these guys is a lot of fun to be with, and he's good, and you're probably going to win. And you know what? That's where a lot of the fun comes from winning.
That's fair. All right. So Robert wins the point. We are tied up 1-1. We are going to head into the next question, which was drafted by Brian in the category of horror. The question is, what is the most thrilling Stephen King scene? So Brian, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
One of the best film adaptations of a Stephen King story is Misery. Annie is a character who seems sweet and harmless on the surface, but clearly is hiding something much more sinister and unhinged inside. And all that becomes clear in Misery's most thrilling scene, the hobbling. Paul Sheldon wakes up to find himself strapped to his bed. Annie reveals she knows he's gotten out and has been roaming the house. He fumbles to find his hidden knife, but she reveals she's already found it. She then starts to calmly and ominously tell the story of the Kimberly Diamond Mine, where to punish workers and make sure they could still work but not run away, they performed hobbling. She then places a piece of wood between his ankles and raises a sledgehammer into frame. You're thinking she wouldn't, would she? But as Paul pleads for her to stop, she takes a swing at one foot. The brief glimpse of the foot snapping is disturbing, but it's the crunching sound of the breaking bones that really gets you. Then she does the same to the other foot. The thrill is in the suspense, the buildup, the tension, wondering what she's planning, then the realization of what she's going to do, and then the execution of it. It's one constantly building crescendo that gets your heart racing, capped by a moment that you can positively feel.
Time. Okay. I'm going to move over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Stephen King material isn't necessarily designed to thrill you in as much as make you kind of squeamish from terror and everything else that's happening. So looking for something in a movie based on that kind of work to excite you and make a tense situation can be a challenge. So you have to look in occasions where you really don't know how the scene's going to play out. You get nervous energy up without being fully reliant on just making you scared. Since this isn't talking about the most horrifying or scary scene, we're talking about most thrilling. And I chose the ending pursuit of Danny by Jack Torrance in The Shining, because the context of leading up to what's happened in the movie is we know that there are ghosts working with Jack. And because of that, we don't know how it's going to play out, because we've seen we've heard of a scenario like this before playing out ominously and horribly for the family. It builds up tension and suspense, not only with how it's shot close quarters, but also far away. The score ratchets it up and down, and we don't really know what's going to happen next as things come behind corners. It builds up that terror and suspense.
Time. Okay. Gonna bring in Brian. You guys have 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
I find the Shining scene to actually be pretty kind of repetitive. I mean, but by the time you get to the maze, especially, you got Jack yelling Danny, then you see the kid running, then you see Jack hobbling behind him, and then over and over again he yells Danny. It's a rinse and repeat, and that takes up half of the scene. Although, I mean, they're never even in the same scene, in the same shot in the scene, because he's so far behind, so you don't even really feel like he's in that much danger. In the second half of your scene, Danny's actually just running back out of the maze, no longer in any danger, as Jack is already lost inside.
I think the suspense is how that is shot, I think plays into kind of the thematics. What Kubrick is a master of is setting up scenes, because it feels far away, but because of how the movements are and how we look at Jack as a kind of monster that's chasing him, it also feels kind of claustrophobic too. And it's not only that them being chased, Danny being chased by Jack, but it's also kind of the ghosts coming about and making themselves known to Wendy and kind of chasing her. And we don't know what's going to happen to her. So it's kind of two chases at once. I kind of miss, Brian, when you talk about thrills with Paul getting hobbled, because I think of it more gruesome than anything, because the main thing that sticks out is his foot going sideways and the crunching, as you mentioned. We know Annie has a tendency to violence. She has her outbursts at the manuscript, her irritation having to go into town to get paper. So we know she is violent. We've seen what happens when he picks up the scrapbook. And she's been looking at him and observing him a lot. So the fact that she would understand and know that he's getting out and that he has a knife in place kind of makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of foreshadowing on his legs that had been broken. So it makes sense that to keep him there, that's what she would do. So I don't really think of it as thrilling, more so as gruesome.
The moment where you actually see his feet break, yes, that is a gruesome. That is the gruesome, cap to the scene. But the thing is, the misery scene is one building suspenseful, thrilling scene. I mean, you realize at that moment that Annie Wilkes played perfectly by Kathy Bates in an Oscar-winning performance. It's the scene where you realize who she is and what she's capable of. She's not just this overzealous fan. She's a full-blown psychopath. He's not just being held captive, but he's in danger of severe pain and injury. And the tone leading up to that, her calm demeanor as you go, and it builds up to that moment where you finally see her break his feet. The Shining chase had maybe potential to be thrilling, but it's constantly interrupted by unnecessary cutaways to Olive Oil flailing her way through the house, seeing things that have no effect on the plot. The chase is happening here. She's walking around the house. Her part in the story is essentially already over. Like the bloody elevator is creepy imagery, but it serves no purpose other than to look creepy and interrupt the flow of the chase. So that's the case where it's not thrilling. It's just creepy. Like you were talking about how it's more creepy. And don't get me started about randomly watching some furry blowing a guy in the bedroom.
I mean, I don't think of that as thrilling. I think of that as out of place.
I don't want to judge.
Yeah, I don't want to judge either. But what I think actually is that the ghosts, the thematics of the ghosts coming out is an idea that the hotel is coming alive. So we don't really know how that's going to play into if the Wendy and Danny actually have a chance to get away. Because it's not only Jack who is unrelenting and undespaired with what's happening in terms of what he's been tasked to do, but it's also how all these ghosts are seemingly coming about, and it's getting stronger and the energy is getting stronger. So we don't know how that's going to play into Danny and Jack's chase, and if Wendy can even get out by the end, up until the point we get to the end. When I think about thrilling scenes in Misery, I can think of a few others that ratchet up the tension more than what's happening with Paul just kind of being stuck in bed and her crushing his feet. I think about when he's outside the room and he knows she's coming back and he has to drag himself back without leaving any evidence that he did, even though he did. I think of when Buster comes to investigate and we don't know what's going to happen. Everything is tense filled. They're coming back and forth. It's a chess match. and then it ends with him being shot. And then the final fight scene, you have a woman who's been caring for this guy all the time, and you have a guy who's been injured. We don't know how that's really going to play out in the end. I find those much more thrilling because I don't know what's going to happen. I felt like I always knew what was going to happen in the
No,
Hobbit.
you knew what was going to happen. If you tell me the first time you saw that movie, you knew what was going to happen with her hobbling him, then you had already heard about the movie beforehand, because that came as a surprise to anybody who watched that the first time. You might know what she's capable of. And yes, in my scene is the scene where you realize what she's capable of, where you see kind of what's behind her. She's had these verbal outbursts, but this is the first time where she's acted out on him. We already know that she knows everything. He knows about her secrets, and she knows that he knows now. And so the anticipation of what's going to happen, what she's going to do, is a big deal. I'm not going to be anything more in.
Yeah,
I couldn't fit another thought into 3 seconds.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fine.
You're not like Nazario, who you just right until I say shut up. Okay.
I already talked too fast as it is. So
we are going to go to Robert first on this one. Robert, you close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think when it comes to Brian's scene, he mentions a lot of the acting, the suspense, the build-up. But I think the scene in The Shining has all of those things ratcheted up to a different level. I think we knew what Annie was capable of with how it is she spills soup on him, with how she drops the paper on his lap, with her ominous tones throughout leading up to that point. So I don't think the idea of the hobbling is very suspenseful. And again, there's a lot of foreshadowing with his legs. We see a lot of shots of his legs. We know that she is a fan of him, which she doesn't want to hurt him, but she wants to keep him there. So with my scene, you got this euphony of committed acting, expert shots and set design, tense score, and harrowing imagery that establishes this exhilarating cat and mouse game between Danny and his father, between Wendy and the ghosts of the hotel. You don't traditionally get from other Stephen King's works. When Dick Halloran comes in and he gets killed from behind, we didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't know what effect it would have on Danny and everybody else, and it sets this off in motion. We don't know what's going to happen. It makes it tense. That's why it's most thrilling.
Okay, we're going to go over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
well, in The Shining, we definitely already know what Jack's capable of long before your finale as well, so that doesn't really work. The hobbling scene in Misery is the epitome of thrilling and suspenseful. It's an uninterrupted, slow, ominous buildup full of emotion and anticipation of what she's going to do. It's the scene you fully realize how dangerous this character is. You experience the fear along with Paul. You experience his realization of what is about to happen and his helplessness to stop it. You experience his pain as she destroys one foot, then the other. The thrill is in anticipating, then seeing, hearing, and feeling every moment of that scene. I like The Shining, and that final chase makes a fine ending to the movie, but it's not thrilling. Certainly not the most thrilling scene in that movie, much less all Stephen King stories. It's a scene where Danny is being chased, though never close enough to be in real danger. Cross-cut with pointless random shots from inside the house and culminating in nothing. Danny walks back out of the maze, and Jack's left wandering inside it, having never even found Danny. Nothing actually happens to thrill you. Misery is more thrilling in 1.5 minute scene than The Shining manages to be in that whole 10-minute plus section.
Time. Okay.
I was feeling slow and sluggish. I feel now good. Three
You guys
questions.
don't sound sluggish to me, but that's fine.
I know. It's the adrenaline's kicking. It's great.
All right.
Prefer slow and sluggish.
Mark, whenever you're ready, you are kicking it off.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah. This is I like this one. Honestly, when I first saw the question about this, we're gonna get a pretty interesting fight here, and we did. I think I ended up going with Brian here, and I think for me, I think Brian, did a good job at kind of poking at Robert's scene a lot, and kind of showing how even though I think kind of Robert tried to make the argument that mine's really thrilling because of all this stuff, and I think Brian kind of picked apart like the scene to an extent to where like, well, your scene kind of has this, and it all kind of affects the flow of what's happening in the scene. And I feel like at the end of the day, he kind of like made Robert's scene feel lesser because it's packed with all this stuff. And at the end of the day, Brian's scene is this tight sequence that just kind of builds and has a big conclusion to it. And I feel like he did a good job of at least kind of taking apart Robert's scene that way and also kind of building up his and kind of making it tough for, I think, Robert to kind of land shots on it.
All right, Cody. You're muted.
Yep.
So, I thought this was interesting. When I heard the question, I thought of Misery instantly. Not the scene I would have picked for Brian, but I think they both picked really good scenes. But I think Thrilling is hard to come up with. Like, it was like they were trying to, how thrilling is thrilling and what does it have to do and what it entails. I think Brian painted the picture of why it was thrilling. I honestly think, like, inadvertently, Robert helped Brian's argument as it went, as like showing the scenes of anger, showing the shots of the legs, like that just builds more towards what the outcome is. It didn't go into my decision, but I thought, like, I think those are to show that that's not that tense, but I think that actually helped paint the picture of why it builds up, like what's going to happen, when her anchor actually gets there. So I ended up going with Brian, but it's like there was stuff seen, and I just don't know if there was enough to combat with what Brian's takedowns on the Shining scene and why it wasn't as thrilling. But I think Robert might just not like the question in general because thrilling's hard to do. So just my take on what happened. So.
Okay, my vote doesn't count. I disagree with you guys tonight, I guess, except for that first question. I went with Robbie Casts. I thought that Robert did a really good job here. And I thought that his when he was going through and in pretty big detail talking about scenes that sounded way more thrilling in Misery than Brian's scene, thought that was huge. Like, his description of those other scenes to me sounded way more thrilling than Brian's own description of Brian's scene. So I thought Robert did really, really great here. Brian did do a good job of kind of, picking apart Robert's scene, but I thought Robert did a good job of building his up and also taking down Brian's. So that being said, it is 2-1 in favor of the champ. We are going to move into the next question, which was drafted by Robert in the category of DC. And the question is, what is the best hero, or who is the best hero, I should say, in a DC non-franchise film? Robert, you're kicking this off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
When I thought of this question, I wasn't thinking about best hero, as in who's the most heroic or who do I want to rescue me, but who in this very up and down listing of non-franchise DC films seems like the most complete character. And I landed on Michael Sullivan Sr., played by Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition. Is he a murderous hitman who had the job to work with a crime family his whole adult life? Absolutely. But through that lens, you can see how separating immoral work from a moral family life and a pious life as a Catholic, trying to remain true to that family, how those worlds converge together terribly and inevitably together. And that makes him, at the very least, the most interesting. But beyond that, with minimal help from his preteen son, he manages single-handedly to take down a whole criminal empire, the criminal empire run by Al Capone and Frank Nitti. He brings them to their knees, and he eradicates his own mob family out of his own town by himself. So not only is he interesting and intriguing, but he's also the most impactful and effective.
Time. Okay, we're going to move over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
So the question posed to us was, who is the best hero in a non-franchise DC film? Not which is the better movie, not the best performance, not even the best character, but the best hero. And with that in mind, I chose John Constantine. He lived a tortured life from childhood, cursed with the ability to see otherworldly things like demons, so much so that he attempted suicide at one point. In an effort to try to redeem his now damned soul and buy his way into heaven, he then spent much of his life using his abilities to send demons back to hell in order to try to win goodwill with God. John is flawed, he's dying, but he's accepted that. But when this new threat arises, he abandons his self-preservation motivations to save the life of Rachel Weisz's Angela in the end sacrificing himself by committing suicide in order to summon Lucifer to stop Gabriel from killing her and stop Lucifer's son from crossing over and taking over the entire earth. And John sacrificed himself again for going and offered extension of his own life to instead allow Angela's sister Isabella, her damned soul, to go to heaven instead of him. Constantine grows and goes on the classic hero's journey in the literal Joseph Campbell fashion. He is the very definition of a hero.
Time. All right. 2 movies I enjoy a lot. 2 characters I like. Let's go into it. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
Brian, Michael Sullivan Sr. is the hero of this story, despite how it is that he kind of conducts his life. I mean, through the course of trying to avenge his family, he does sort of eradicate crime as a result of what he's trying to do. And he also takes care of his son, who up to that point, he had really no connection with. So we get to see him evolve sort of as a father. And he gives money to the people who help him convalesce, the people in the farm. So he does a lot of things for other people, even if it isn't the best things. The whole main point of what Constantine does, even when he's dealing with what's going on with Angela, is trying to buy his way back into heaven. Everything is involved with his own self-interest. And when he wasn't trying to be self-interested, he tried to kill himself. So he can be a hero, but for a lot of it, he's kind of just an asshole who's looking out for number one. Michael Sullivan Sr. doesn't do that, and I think it's more effective with how it is he accomplishes that.
The whole point of him starting out as selfish, and then he proves that he's not at the end. It's called a character arc. It's a hero's journey. You said yourself in your opening that you didn't think about it as a hero. You said you think about who's the most complete character, who's the most interesting. You're talking about your protagonist as a character, not as a hero, which is the question here. Yes, he took out an entire crime family, but not for any kind of good motivations. He has lived a life of murder and crime, not for revenge or self-defense, but just for financial gain. And he's never regretted or rethought any of his life choices of crime or murder. He only stopped because his boss turned on him. He basically was fired with a death sentence. Otherwise, he would have kept going. Everything he does is basically just, he is all about self-preservation.
I mean, it's preservation, but also for his family. It's not for full self-interest. It's designed to make sure his family can have the best life they can. And I mean, there's a lot of situations where Constantine has an arc sort of, but I think where they end up at the end is the same, because Constantine sacrifices himself to save the soul of Isabel and Angela, and Michael Sullivan blackens his soul to save the soul of his son so that he doesn't turn into who he is, because he sees that in himself. So I actually think self-sacrifice is part of everything that both of them do. But I think leading up to that, there are heroic moments in what it is that Michael Sullivan does. Maybe it's not met at the time as being a heroic invention, but he gets there through the journey of having to preserve not only his life, but the life of his son. I think it's more about how it is he can save his son more than himself, culminating what happens at the end.
Mike didn't do anything to save his son from his soul burning dark and going down his road. The son said himself that he was not able to shoot. His decision not to shoot was not Mike's doing. It was his own decision. And as far as saving his son, he got his son in this mess. His son didn't survive due to the efforts of Mike. He survived despite Mike's career, dragging him into this whole thing in the first place, and even involving him in bank heists at one point as a getaway driver, which could very well get him shot and certainly is going to get people on his tail. Mike's last minute shooting of McGuire, even when he does shoot him before he gets his son, it's maybe barely counts as one heroic moment, but that one moment is still not enough to make him a hero, because he's not even saving anyone. And it's one moment. Even Colossus would tell you it takes 4 or 5 moments to be a hero.
I would say that in relation to what happens with Constantine, yeah, he has a character arc, but in the course of him being a hero, he gets a lot of people killed, a lot of people close to him, not innocents who have no idea what's going on, people in the know who he's super reliant on get killed based on him taking on this case, and based on him not kind of seeing the forest through the trees and understanding how it is to get to the end of the line. And I mean, because of that, he's very reliant on these people. So it seems like by the end, he's sort of just kind of chasing his own tail. I mean, Michael Sullivan, I think how he goes about performing his tasks, he engenders a lot of respect. I think he's a stoic hero who just has a job that makes it seem like he's evil, but really he's only trying to provide for his family. and his
By killing
son,
people.
By killing people, but yes, but his son had to be involved because his son involved himself. So he really had no choice in that matter when that happened because of how it conflicted with what's going on with Daniel Craig. So he was left in a bad situation. He tried to make the most out of it and keeping, avenging everything that's happening, keeping them off his tail while involving his son and keeping him protected.
I'll also say that one thing that makes a great hero is a great memorable villain. And Constantine has multiple, including Peter Stormare's Lucifer, and spoiler alert, even Tilda Swinton's great take on Gabriel as a villain. Your villains, which are really just antagonists, because even your hero's a villain, are just another iteration of generic backstabbing mobsters.
Okay. Brian, you close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Michael Sullivan is an interesting protagonist in a good movie, but a head-scratching pick for the category of hero, which is what the question was. Of the two characters, John Constantine is by far the more interesting, but more importantly, for this conversation, he's the best hero in a very literal sense, the only actual hero in this conversation. Michael Sullivan spent his life murdering people and engaging in a life that jeopardized his own family, ultimately getting his wife and son and sister-in-law killed. He never even expresses any regret for these past life choices, but rather only when his own life is in danger does he fight back against his former crime family. Constantine never killed anyone but demons. He started out with selfish motivations, but then grew and became a hero, selflessly using his abilities to save people and the whole world, willing to sacrifice himself more than once for the good of others. Even God recognized Constantine's heroic sacrifice and chose to allow him entry into heaven instead of letting his soul be damned to hell. Road to Perdition's own epilogue has Michael Jr. saying that whenever people ask him if Michael Sullivan was a good man, he just tells them, "He was my father." If even Michael Sullivan's own son can't bring himself to call his father good, how can he be a hero?
Time. Okay, we're gonna go over to to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think good is a relative term built in the context of what's happening in the story. Michael Sullivan paints the portrait, his portrayal, what happens with Tom Hanks, is best amongst what's happened in DC films. He's very human. He does everything for his family. He's stoic. People understand his motivations. Even if he has a bad job, he's very moral and pious with how it is he goes about protecting himself. But it's not really about himself. It's about protecting his son and his innocence, which he's able to do by the end. I don't believe that his son wouldn't have pulled the trigger if it came to he was actually going to be violent with what happened with Jude Law. Constantine is very selfish all the time. It just happens so that he gets into a case where sacrificing himself is the best means to win, to beat Gabriel and to beat Lucifer. And who cares about very memorable villains? The point is the hero's journey. Tom Hanks has that throughout. Constantine, it's very stilted, and he's very
Time. All right. I'm going to bring in M and C.
So, how's everybody doing?
I'll do better if my name's on your board.
Probably is.
All right. I'm ready. Are you guys ready?
Yeah, you're the slow one.
I was writing a long joke answer.
Right.
I went with Brian the MacGuffin Michaels. And here's why. I thought that Brian did a really good job in this fight of hammering in the question. And I thought that Robert pivoted a little bit. He kind of started out contextualizing the question maybe just a little bit differently than Brian did. And then when Brian kind of called him on it, I think Robert pivoted pretty successfully. But I thought overall Brian just gave me more on why Constantine was a better hero in his movie than Michael was in his. But this was close and weird in the sense that, like, they both picked characters who have flaws and both do things that are bad and both do things that are good. And I thought that Brian just had the slight edge on this one. So, Mark, where are you voting?
Yeah, it is interesting when I feel like both competitors actually pick choices in which I think they both of these choices I think kind of lean their chins out, like kind of like for the other guy to hit a little bit because Robert had the pick of like one his guy was a hitman and I think and then with Brian Robert hammered home pretty well like Constantine is kind of an asshole and like a pretty selfish guy for like 80 to like 90% of the movie and like we kind of got in a lot of that throughout it and it's at the end of the day I think who I think both did the kind of a better job of building up said person and also who I think kind of was able to kind of skirt away from that from their opponent a little bit. I did go with Brian on that one. I mean, yeah, I mean, like it just kind of felt like Brian just kept hammering point after point on Michael Sullivan. It was just kind of hard for Robert to kind of keep up. And I do think he did a pretty good job of hammering Constantine. I think he brought up a lot of things about Constantine like I wouldn't have thought about. And I think kind of bloodied up Brian a bit during this fight, though it was, just Brian just like put up too many shots on Michael Sullivan for Robert to get this point.
All right, Cody, your vote doesn't count. Where have you gone and why?
So I'm not one to sugarcoat stuff, and I'm tell it like it is. I believe this was an ass whooping from Jump Street. I just do, and I think it's because Robert went into defense mode almost and let Brian just keep punching him in the face, which I think he had to because he felt like if I don't, then I'm just going to lose this fight. But he said, question, your own son thinks he's a scumbag. And you're like, well, he's protecting his family. I don't give a shit. He's killing people. His own people, mob. Like, it was just like, and I think every fighter that's ever played in this league has one of these rounds that is just like, can the 5 minutes be up already? Like, it's just bad for me. And I don't think he played bad. I just think, like, when you're thinking this question, you write it down, shoot, Road to Perdition, Tom Hanks, great performance, the most likable in that movie. But when you pair it up against that, and even Constantine, which I thought was a weird choice too, he was able to paint it. Welcome to the world of fighting Brian. He'll pick a weird one, but able to paint it like he's William Shakespeare over there. So I ended up going with Brian. But I think it was just hard for. It was Brian's version when he picked Jojo Rabbit against Cam, and it was like you picked a Nazi. Like there was just no way to shake it, and he just kept coming back to him. He's like, yeah, but if you take away the Nazi, he's actually a really funny kid. Don't care, Nazi. So it's a bad deal. So yeah.
All right. That means that Brian gets another point. It is 3-1, which means that Robert needs to hit this final question, prep question, in order to send it to the bonus. So your question is in the category of actors and actresses, and your question is, what is the best acting performance from Samuel L. Jackson that is not in a Tarantino film and not a Fandom film? Brian, you are kicking it off. You get 1 minute when you start talking.
Samuel L. Jackson is known for playing a lot of bombastic, over-the-top characters. He may just be one of the best at that, but he doesn't get enough credit for his dramatic talents in portraying more subdued, down-to-earth roles as well. The best example of this is his turn as Carl Lee Haley in 1996 as A Time to Kill. Carl Lee is a man whose daughter was abducted, raped, beaten, and left for dead by two rednecks. He is grief-stricken upon seeing her, and soon thereafter turns to desperation and anger. Fearing they would be acquitted in racist Mississippi, he took the law into his own hands and shot and killed them, also accidentally injuring a deputy in the process. But it's now Carl Lee who would stand trial for murder. Jackson truly inhabits this role and shows the full range of his talent. He effectively portrays what any father would feel and want to do if this happened to their daughter. Over the course of the film, he conveys everything from pain to anguish, anger, desperation, guilt, grief, acceptance, and even joy in the end. Samuel L. Jackson is truly one of the best actors around, and there's no better example of his pure talent and range than in A Time to Kill.
Okay. We're going to move over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think when you look at the filmography of Samuel L. Jackson, you see characters that are carbon copies of each other, mannerisms, attitude, how they're cool, and while played convincingly, they don't feel lived in. There's this barrier to connect on a human level because they seem so grandiose. So when he gets a chance to subvert expectations, he can play beyond himself and that caricature of himself and be enticing. And I think that's best portrayed as Mr. Glass from Unbreakable. You have a role where Samuel L. Jackson gets to play in two sandboxes he doesn't usually get to inhabit, where he gets to be pitiful and powerless and where he gets to manipulate beyond a veiled facade. Usually everything is within your face, but it's the subtlety of Elijah Price and how it is he's constantly moving the chess pieces around while having this sense of how it is that I can get through these things, but beneath it, there's a sense of cool confidence that only comes about when he wants you to see it. So you're seeing something, there's a whole other layer behind that. And that's why I think it's the best portrayal in this context.
All right, 2 excellent films and excellent characters, performances. I'm excited. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
In scene after scene in Time to Kill, he gets to show what he can do. He shows the panic when he first hears the attack, the anguish when he arrives home and sees his daughter, the guilt he feels when his daughter tells him that she kept calling for him and didn't answer, the grief when he finds out she can never have children. Then, of course, the anger and rage and the crescendo of his testimony when he, screams out, yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell. And the instant regret he shows when he realizes what he's just said in court. But it's not just the dialogue; it's the small moments, like his reactions watching testimonies of other people, and his smirks in the final shot when he realizes he could be friends maybe with Jake in the future. It's just the subtle intelligence that he shows, and from the big moments to the small moments, this movie lets him show everything that Samuel L. Jackson can do.
You mentioned the intelligence, and we're set up through the majority of the Time to Kill to make believe that despite what's happening as an impending doom scenario, that he can maintain his composure and to the point where a credible defense, he's pushing that along himself, even helping Jake along. But it takes less than 1 minute of pressure from the DA before he starts screaming that admission of guilt. And that's all I think about when I think of A Time to Kill. That's the memification of what happens through that movie. And to the point where, because he's so pushed aside, because we're focusing more on how the white people consider the racism, he only really plays 2 levels at 2 polar positions. It's very quiet sitting in jail as things happen outside of his context, and that screaming scene. So I don't see all the different mannerisms and all the different things, displays of emotion that you're discussing, because it's all boiled down to that, because we don't get a lot of time with him.
The things you're talking about, like how it just takes the 1 minute or whatever of examination before he has that outburst. These are not performance issues. Those are plot issues. Those are writing issues that did that. Same thing when you're talking about how the things with Samuel L. Jackson and Mr. Glass. You're talking about character issues of what he's thinking behind the scenes. But Mr. Glass is a very interesting character. Jackson's not allowed to give a great performance. Shyamalan has a bad habit of directing his actors to play roles very bland and one note, and Mr. Glass is no different. It's very flat. It's very monotone. It's largely emotionless, often just staring. Jackson isn't able to show his acting range at all. There's basically 2 scenes where he isn't completely monotone. One when he falls down the stairs, which he kind of overacts the pain, and the final shot where you're supposed to feel some emotion, but even with the fake tears on his face, it's played very flat. I have no doubt it was by Shyamalan's direction, because we know Samuel Jackson can act better than that.
But you just admitted, you said if it was Shyamalan's direction, then that's an issue with the directing, not with the acting at that point.
And didn't let him be a good actor.
But I think he buoys the points of what's happening in the movie way better than like how acting between Bruce Willis and Robin Wright and the kid is going. I think Samuel L. Jackson gets to live in this role and gets to slowly uncover things through how his facial expressions are, how his tones change, how he's trying to investigate, and he has an investigative nature, and how that comes through in the subtleties of how he talks to people, his voice inflection. I think his character emotions, I think it comes through very well. How he's disappointed when he's in the comic book store, how he turns into a petulant child when he does that, and then how it flips when something uncovers. His brain's constantly working, and that comes through in the forefront with how his mannerisms go. I don't get that in A Time to Kill because there's not a lot of chances to draw on that. Samuel L. Jackson even admits himself that there were things left on the cutting room floor that would have elevated that performance that he didn't get a chance to do. And I think because of that, you see that there's stiltedness in what we get to see. It's either very quiet or it's very loud in that occasion on the stand. So I don't think there's a lot of space in the gamut of range of what he can do as shown through that.
Well, again, the problems you're bringing up are with the editing of the movie, are with the direction of the movie. And now I was talking about the direction of Shyamalan as the way he directed him to act in those scenes in Unbreakable. You're talking about the direction as far as scenes they cut out and things that would have made it even better. Yes, he maybe had even better scenes. Maybe could have been nominated for an Oscar, which I know is his complaint in the article you're referring to when you said that. But the fact that you say you don't see any subtleties, any range in this performance baffles me, because every single emotion he shows comes through differently, from the pain and guilt to the anger to the frustration when he's in the cell talking to Jake about we aren't friends, outside of the cell we wouldn't talk to each other, we wouldn't be friends, of course, which then gets flipped on at the end when they decide maybe they can. But you see every different emotion. You get to see Samuel L. Jackson show everything he can do. He puts forth the best performance, whereas in yours, he's a good actor, but like I said, Shyamalan doesn't let him show what he can do. He's basically kind of doing one thing through the whole movie.
I don't think he's just doing one thing. I think you're made to believe that, but you can feel that there's more based on how it is that he interacts with people. It seems as if he's just a crazy person, and that's how Sam plays it. But underneath, because of how it is that he asks those questions, how his voice and tones contemplative things, that we know that there's more happening, and he expresses that through his emotion and actions.
Okay, we are going to start with Robert on this one. Robert, you get 1 minute when you start talking.
Mr. Glass in Unbreakable is the role I never thought Samuel L. Jackson could really manage. And given the pool of eligible movies, I think it stands above everything that's in his usual repertoire, because it's very quiet, and it's very much pitiful as it comes through in his intonation, in his actions, in his mannerisms. Everything feels calculated, but you feel like everything hinges on him being able to investigate and find a superhero in this world. And if it doesn't, he turns petulant, he turns emotional, everything turns on its head. In A Time to Kill, I only remember that time when he gets very bombastic, and every other time he seems very stoic as he's being told things. And how it is that he plays through that doesn't really make sense logically. You could say that's the writing, but I think it's how it is that Sam coordinates the words on the page and how it's displayed on screen. I don't really feel as if he's expressing what you would normally feel in that situation, and it's hammed up at the most inopportune time.
Okay, we're going to go over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
If that's all you remember, you probably should have rewatched this movie before the match. Mr. Glass is a memorable original villain, and Samuel L. Jackson does a good job playing him, but he isn't able to give a great acting performance in that role. He's being held back. He just isn't given the opportunity to show any range or any emotion, really. M. Night Shyamalan created a very specific, muted, monotone role that limits what we get to see Jackson do. He plays that part well, but he doesn't get to show near his full talent in that role, which is why it can't be considered his best. With A Time to Kill, we get to see Jackson do it all. At times despair, at times enraged, at times hopeful or guilt-ridden. He even still gets to strike down upon people with great vengeance and furious anger. But he does it all here with realism and subtlety. Personifying real emotions without the caricature that he becomes in the more blockbustery roles he takes in some movies. Samuel L. Jackson has had some great performances, and even if you were to include his more acclaimed roles in Quentin Tarantino projects, A Time to Kill would still belong near the top of that list.
Time. All right, I'm disappointed no one took Snakes on a Plane, but here we are.
1B.
I'm sick of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane.
Oh, I thought you were saying monkey flying snakes.
Yeah.
As a Monday to Friday.
Is that like the FX dub version?
Monday
The
to
best
Friday.
one. It's better than motherfucking. Honestly.
What's the really bad one from Die Hard 2?
Mr. Falcon.
Mr. Falcon.
Yeah.
They used
Is
to
it
do one
EA,
as well.
Mr. Falcon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so dumb. Okay.
Is dumb. That's why you love it.
I mean, I've never seen that version. I've just heard of it. I was the fourth child. My parents gave up trying to control what I was able to watch. And
Tim
not watch.
trying to watch a show.
Well, that was only on TV versions, and I'm sure you could watch it on DVD or streaming or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Streaming wasn't really a thing.
Only us old folks know this shit.
I didn't have streaming.
Rewind my tapes.
I did have the original Die Hard on VHS. I did have that. That and True Lies on
I
VHS.
had 2 tapes for Titanic.
Titanic and True Lies and Die Hard were like mainstays in my house on VHS. Okay. I believe Cody is kicking us off.
Okay. So, best acting performance in a Jackson movie that's not Tarantino and Fandom. Limited Options did a great job picking both of the
He's
stuff.
in like 150 movies.
I know, but when you take out all those performances, the best are not there. You guys did a really good job picking it. I thought this was an interesting fight. I think you guys tried to fight it 2 different ways. I don't take, if this is best versatile performance, Brian makes a lot of cases, but I didn't really matter a whole lot for me is if you're acting in the one role and you're doing the thing, but it's the best version of that thing. I don't really care if you don't make sad, happy thing, because one of those could not add up to the other. So best acting performance overall, that one didn't really work for me, so I had to dumb it down to give me what it was. I agree Robert was focusing a little bit on the technical side. I think you pointed it out, which I think was a downside because he kind of pivoted and switched it up on that. You should have just let him keep hammering that because I think that was the hole he needed for you to win. So I ended up going with Robert because I just think it was like too much of the thing. But I think you showed most versatile, but I don't know if that has to be a part of best acting performance to be the best actor. But you do. I don't think you've seen The Time to Kill at times too, because the stuff you were saying was weird. But he's very versatile in the movie. I don't know, but
I've seen it. I've seen A Time to Kill.
Okay, then you just bullshitted, and I liked it. So,
okay, I'll go next. I thought this was interesting. I've seen both these movies. It's been a long time since I've seen either of them. I enjoy both of them. Unbreakable's probably my favorite film from M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong. I went with Roberto as well. And it's tough because for most of the fight, I was kind of on Brian's side rather. But I thought I thought Cody was right. I thought Robert pivoted at a certain point and did a really good job of telling us why Mr. Glass doesn't need all of these like crazy outburst, varied moments in the same way that Time to Kill does. It was close for me. I thought Brian painted the picture perfectly that Time to Kill is a tragic performance, a really good performance, has like a scene stealing type of moment. But I thought Robert by the end was able to give me why the whole performance overall in Glass was, or in as Glass in the better movie, not fucking Glass. Unbreakable was better. Glass fucking sucks.
Never Glass.
Anya Taylor-Joy's in it, but it fucking sucks, which is too bad. Mark, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
Well, first of all, I think the best villain in the Shyamalan movie is the plants.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Fucking kill me. Shut up.
And the most frightening of all his villains by far. I do agree with the panel, though. I did go with old Bobby C. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think I was won over more by the subtlety of one performance than kind of the whole big show of one performance. I think kind of Robert did a good job poking enough holes into that, and also kind of propping up his in kind of with at least that thought in mind.
All right. Well, so that means that Robert wins the point, and we're going to the bonus. So it's 3-2. Here's the situation. Brian needs to hit one of the bonus to win the game. Robert needs to hit both of these bonus questions to win the game. So how this is going to work in a title match setting is I randomized which side of Fanzone was going to go first in the bonus, either Fandom or Mayzone. After that, I randomized the remaining categories that weren't drafted in tonight's match to find out what the category would be for their respective things for Fandom and Melee. So I'm going to say the question. I am then going to repeat the question. Once I have repeated the question a second time, you guys will be able to answer the question. Whoever answers first will be going first. You each get 45 seconds, followed by 30 seconds. Any questions?
No, this is all I wanted, honestly. Everything else is gravy. So
This is
All
what I
right.
didn't want. So
That's fair. The first, the side of Fanzone that was randomized first was Fandom.
shit.
And the category that was randomized was the Wizarding World.
Double shit.
I knew you would say that. Your question is,
Tim rigged it.
no, the randomizer does what the randomizer does.
I would not put that evil out there. He does not.
The question in Wizarding World is, who is the best wizard? Oh, I have a typo, so I'm going to just hang on.
Throw out the question then, new category.
Who is the best wizard or witch character that isn't a Hogwarts student? So again, who is the best wizard or witch character that isn't a Hogwarts student? I should clarify, they could have been a Hogwarts student, but aren't a Hogwarts student in the films that they represent.
does that include flashbacks?
No. Present day main part of the film.
Okay. Remus
Snape.
Lupin.
I heard Robert first say Remus Lupin, and then I heard Brian shortly after say Snape. Does everyone agrees there?
I think it was same time almost. I think Snape came out first on my end, but yeah, I would agree. If the players agree, I think that's fair.
Mark, your thoughts, or should we go to the tape? You're muted.
Learn how to use your stuff.
I heard Remus Lupin first.
Okay.
So
All right. So then we'll go with that. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take Cody. I'm going to take Mark off screen. I'm going to stay on screen to give you guys your 10-second warnings. Robert, you said Remus Lupin first. So you have 45 seconds on the clock to answer the question, who is the best wizard or witch character that isn't a Hogwarts student, when you start talking.
Thinking about this question, I want somebody who's effective as a witch or wizard, somebody who's powerful, but also someone who's a good and someone who can understand and express what it is that they've learned and teach the next generation. Nobody does that better than Remus Lupin. If not for him, Harry never would have survived year 3 and anything beyond. He's able to tap into the potential of Harry and the rest of the students and be the best defense against the dark arts teacher they ever had by teaching them Patronus charms, by teaching them how to overcome their fears while dealing with this incredible burden of being a werewolf and how that impacts his standing at Hogwarts with everybody else, including Snape. He's benevolent, but he's also dark. He's got so many sides to him that makes him the best witch or wizard.
Time. All right. Brian, 45 seconds whenever you're ready.
So I want to know who's the best wizard or witch character who wasn't a Hogwarts student. And I think that the one who's the best character, who happens to also be a wizard, is the teacher in Professor Severus Snape. Snape is the guy who, from the very first films, you assume is the antagonist. You assume he's a villain because of his very demeanor. He's played excellently by Alan Rickman, where you can kind of almost feel like evil oozing off of him. And he makes a great foil to Harry Potter. He makes this great teacher is intimidating to these students. But then as the movies go on, you realize there's something more to him. There's something else under the surface. And you've ultimately learned his true motivations for what he's really doing, that he's really trying to protect Harry, that he knew their parents, and that he was in love with his mother. And all these things, these layers of things you learn about Severus Snape just make you appreciate him that much more as a character, because it makes you look back on everything you saw before that and reevaluate it and realize that this person you thought he was at the beginning isn't the person he truly was. He was sacrificing his own image to help.
Time. Robert, 30 seconds.
I don't think you can care about the layers of Snape because for 99.9% of it, he's just an asshole who's torturing his students. And you don't really get that till after he dies because of a big reveal. It doesn't really have to do with Snape per se. It's how it is expressed out through what's going on in the Pensieve. Remus Lupin, he's grounded, he's dark, he's brooding, but he's also light and cheerful. And he tries to get all of that while being a powerful and wonderful teacher and a powerful member of Dumbledore's army and the bit against what's going on with Voldemort. He's everything that you want in a witch and wizard, and better than
Brian, 30 seconds.
You talk about you didn't care how his character ended up because for 99% of the time, he's just an asshole. But he's still a great character. Even when he is perceived as a villain, he is a great character. We're not talking about who is good, who is the nicest teacher, who is the most helpful teacher. We're talking who is the best character. And Severus Snape, as played by Alan Rickman, does a great job of that. With Remus Lupin, his biggest problem is his limited appearance in the series. You get very little of him in this movie, so you don't get to see how much. He has an effect on these students in a little bit that he gets to interact with them, but you don't see enough of him to make him a great fleshed out character.
Time. Okay. Good shit, guys. Oy vey.
Oy vey.
While we're all writing down our answers, I watched Rocky 5 today. That movie fucking sucks.
There used to be a bit. I'm sure Cody knows this. Bill Simmons, the Massachusetts, the guy, sports guy, the guy. He used to do cartoons, and one of the cartoons was he went to a store to buy a Rocky box set, and he's like, "I just want to pay for the first 4 because this is like in the late 90s. I don't want Rocky 5. I don't want that anywhere near me." He's like, "You have to pay for the whole thing." So he gets it, and then he takes out the DVD and has his friend jump on like the register or whatever and give it like a people's elbow and smash it to shit in front of everybody. To express how much he hates Rocky 5.
That's hilarious. You guys ready?
Yeah.
I believe we are to Mark starting first. Cody, right? You started first last time?
Correct. No.
You would have, yeah, because it's 6-1.
Yeah, this is the 6th question. So yes. Okay, so go ahead, Mark, whenever you're ready.
All right. Yeah, this one's pretty close. I think at the end of the day, I can't think of a relate to this one. So I just went with Brian.
Wow.
Yeah. I just kind of feel like in the case of kind of attacking, I feel like just in case attacking the question, kind of building up who is the better character. I feel like Brian just, at least for me, just did a better job in that. So I still have a ton much to say. So just go ahead and take it.
All right, Cody, you're next. What's up?
I couldn't disagree more with Mark. I went with Robert. I think Brian did his best, and you could see him do his best, but I think he was trying to run uphill with roller skates. He did the best. He tried to paint it in the picture about like saying what the true thing is, and like he did a really good job in his opening, and then Robert just sliced it down. Like those moments that you talked about don't really matter till after the fact that he's gone. You don't get to see that side of him. And I think Brian did a real good job trying to recover, but I just didn't hear any real takedowns on Lupin at all, which I don't think you would technically have to, but like when you're giving me positives on a character and I hear nothing negative, it's hard for me to vote against that character. So I had to end up going with Robert.
All right. I agree with one of you and disagree with one of you. Whoa. Shocker. Because you guys voted differently. No, I thought this was great. I agree with Cody that it seemed like maybe Brian was itching for something in the first part, but then I thought Robert kind of stumbled in his second part. So I thought we kind of evened out on that front. Both picked great characters, by the way. Surprised no one went for Sirius Black immediately. Like I thought that was like going to be the immediate choice. So I thought that Brian did do a good job of talking about Snape's villain, like how you see he oozes villain, the performance is good, and then by the end you realize all this other stuff. And I thought that Robert's takedown of like, that's fucking stuff you see through the pensieve, and you don't know it until the very end. And then was able to point out everything phenomenal that Remus Lupin does in Prisoner of Azkaban. Brian's second half, I thought I disagree with Cody a little bit, where I thought that he said that Brian did nothing against Lupin. I disagree. I think Brian was able to say, like, just saying, like, there's not enough data. Like, he's only there a little bit. There's not, whereas Snape is there in every film, and you get a ton of the Snape back and forth, being good guy, being bad guy. I thought was really good. Ultimately, I went with Brian. I thought that I agree with Mark. I thought that Brian, by the end, surprisingly, because I know he doesn't like these fucking movies, convinced me that through all the movies, the thing that really sold me was at the end. He said, even without the thing at the end, with the reveal of him being a good guy, if that's how you perceive it, his character is still great through the first 7 movies, and or 7.5 movies, that you still like him as a character, whether he's good or bad. And that added on to the fact of the Lupin is barely there, kind of won me over. I agree with everything Robert said pro Lupin, but I think that Brian did a better job right at the end there of everything pro Snape. So that means your winner is, and still Fanzone debate champion, is Brian Michaels. We are going to quick give them a respite and talk to the judges real quick. Cody, what are your thoughts right after the match? I can see you disagreed with me and Mark on that last one.
Yeah, I just don't.
Overall,
yeah. The only reason my facial is like, I just don't feel like it's fair to penalize because Lupin's not in enough movies. Why that's not enough evidence? I think that was weird.
That wasn't the only reason, but that's it.
But I know that was like a main talking point because he's in multiple, but like runtime is like a minute, like 2 minutes per. Like he's not a ton. But either way, is what it is. I disagreed on that question, but we disagreed all night on certain things.
That's true.
I think Robert showed up. I think Robert showed up really well today. I think if the poll came out, nothing against Robert, but what Brian was able to do in this league earlier, it'd probably be a really misleading poll. But no, Robert came to play. He prepped. He did really good. I think he made some mistakes on the overall choices. But I think that's just what's going to happen, because when you get an answer that you think this is bulletproof, like this seems great, I think I have all this. You play somebody that literally has a Tommy gun that just pops holes in everything. It's crazy. And the hardest thing about playing Brian is he just plays nonchalant, like he doesn't care to be here, but he does, and you can tell by everything he is. But he's like so nonchalant. You'll say something, he's like, "Yeah, fuck off," and then picks on something else. He's hard to play because like me and Kirk are like seething, and he's just like, "Fuck off, move on." But like I could see at the end when he won, like the relief, the situation. He does care about this. He puts so much work into this. He deserves it. But yeah. I was interested to see that last speed round question because that's where I thought it was going to go. But but overall, great job, Brian. And Robert has now entered that next tier of players. I think there's only 5 in this league that are like could win on any match, but the championship match is going to be that. I think over the next year or so, we could be just trading belts here. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. And let's bring in Robert and talk to him. Robert, fantastic job. Obviously not the way you want things to go, but I think going up against the champ and taking him to even 1 bonus round is a great accomplishment. And I thought you played really fantastic. I agree with Cody that I think that we can confidently say you are now in this top echelon of Fanzone debate players that can come in and really pack a punch. What are your thoughts right after the match?
I appreciate the kind words. The one, like the DC question, for instance, I went back and forth on that a lot because Constantine was who I would have picked because I like how his journey ends up. And when you look at other heroes, I just kept thinking about how non-bulletproof they are and how much they could be. I knew what I picked was a risk as a hero thing. That's why I tried to set the argument as I did, but then I got lost, and I should have been steadfast in that. And that was my fault. I think that's where the match kind of turned a bit. 11-7 overall. He swept 2, I swept 1, and then it was split all the rest. So I thought it was fairly close. I'm obviously disappointed. I thought I didn't have that last one in the bag, but I felt very good about it. So not getting it is kind of a cut at the knees, but you can't go in expecting anything. I felt like I wanted to get to the speed round because I thought my ability to improvise on the fly would be very beneficial here. It has in the past, even though I'm 2-2, I think, in speed rounds though. But like, you got to give hats up to Brian. He decimated me in like a few different ways. I tried to do my best with regards to that. It is hard to keep your attentions at everywhere and be as energized. I mean, I stay up very late watching Misery and stuff because I like the context of being able to argue. Tim gave me the point because I watched Misery and I was able to put in those scenes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that. But hats off to Brian. He's a great competitor. He's a great champion. He went through that gauntlet. And I appreciate you all for putting this on and for your kind words with regards to how I played. Because I think for the most part, I was fine. I think I stumbled a bit. And I wish I could get that back. But here we are.
Robert, it's all a learning thing. Let if we're being honest, the last your first little run, you won a couple matches and then you were out of the picture. Then you came back and you got to a contender match and you lost. And then you came back again and you won a contender match. And now you lost in the title match. So if history is proving anything, your next run, you're going to make it to a title match and win the title. But
the fighter I played, not that guy in here anymore. I'll tell you that much. Like you are in that top 5. So just keep working and you'll be there.
Thank you, buddy.
Well, Robert, congrats. Even with a loss today, I think Nick and I were talking about this the other night. I think you're pretty much a lock at this point for Multiplex Player of the Year. Really impressive stuff across the board. So congrats on the match. Well played. We'll see you next season. I look forward to seeing you then. But let's move over to our winner tonight, Mr. Brian Michaels. Brian, you set out to just get that one defense, and it's happened. So are you going to drop the belt, or will you make Kirk and...
Oh, no, I'll keep defending as long as I can. I'm just saying I wanted to make sure I had at least one. Didn't want to be just... Didn't want it to be...
I don't want you to step away.
No, I'm announcing. No. No, I'm going to keep playing this, obviously. As far as this match, I will say of this title picture, Robert was the one I was most afraid of because I think that he was kind of the clear best debater. I mean, anything can happen in any given debate. You don't know what'll happen, but he was kind of the one that I feared making it here, and he did. But honestly, I'm glad because I'd rather have a good debate that I lose than one that's kind of sloppy and win. So I mean, I enjoyed this one. I will say I got pretty worried because going and being down 3-2 and needing to win both speed rounds is exactly where I was against Cody. And so it's just one more thing where, because Robert and I, like you guys have said, we kind of have very similar styles. And I was afraid that he was going to, win both speed rounds and beat me. The first one turns out to be Wizarding World, which is like, fuck me. And I normally take a lot of time to kind of choose my speed round choice just to kind of make sure I'm picking the best one. But this one, I kind of had to spout one out because I don't know a whole lot about many of these characters. I kind of knew enough about Severus Snape to do it, but not enough about the others. You want to know why I checked the screen time of Lupin? Because I don't remember much else about him, honestly. Couldn't tell you much else. He became a wolf. That's about all I know about him. But I mean, it was fun. I think that I was helped by that DC question where he kind of, like he even said, took a risk. And Cody made a great parallel to me and the Jojo Rabbit question. I kind of did the same thing. I took a risk which could pay off or it could really not, and it didn't work for him. And I think that, that point made all the difference, because going into this, I don't know if I would have been able to win both of the speed rounds again. But yeah, lots of fun, and I'm sure he's another one we'll be seeing again.
Yeah, Brian, this does mean, like you said, you were going to play again later on this season, which will be at the final act. You will be at the main event for the end of the year. And here are some names. I started to say them, and then I was cut off by you congratulating yourself. I'm sorry. It's okay. Brian, these are your options. You are going to be playing either Kurt Kolakowski, Cameron Holtzman, Jacoby Bancroft, or Nazario Montenegro. All people who have challenged or held this title are coming for it. Thoughts?
Well, 3 of them I just beat in my last run.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I'd prefer to face Jacoby, both because just to be a new experience, but also because I think he'd be a lot of fun to debate. But any of the other ones, could be good. Kirk obviously is going to be a front runner because he's, held the title before. And I think I barely, skimmed by beating him on the time I beat him. And Cameron and Nazario, I'm sure will be out for revenge if they make it this far, and they'll have a fire out of them that'll make them better debaters too. So, but if I had my druthers though, I'd want to do Jacoby.
All right, fair enough. Brian, congrats on the win and the retaining the title. We will see you at the final act. I look forward to it. Let's get final thoughts from Mark.
Oh yeah, no, this was a pretty good one. I think you had mentioned kind of before, at least about kind of at least in the last couple matches when we've had Cody and Kirk in here, just got a bunch of people yelling, and that same thought I thought kind of Robert was kind of a neat I think matched up well in Brian in that one, because I think whenever you talked about Brian just kind of letting the match come to him and kind of brushing stuff off, I thought kind of Robert, at least over the course of him doing it kind of done the same thing. And I feel I think played pretty well, at least from that one. Of course, he had a couple of those slip ups, at least notably on the DC character question, but most part, I think he's still played pretty hard. And honestly, I feel he definitely had to make Brian work for a lot of these. I think also landed a lot of good blows on Brian throughout the match. But now Brian just proven why he's just he is just kind of became another one of those notable people in this division, and proving he's just going to be a problem for however long he decides to keep playing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do it for us tonight here at Fanzone Debate. Thank you to Cody and Mark for judging this one with me. Thank you to Kirk behind the scenes for helping with questions and whatnot. I have been Tim. We will see you guys next time with another great match. Until then, have a great night. Bye.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please come again. We have a lot more groceries.